So I had my MBTI type clarified a second time. I finally got it done, and I have some answers for you guys. I'm going to reveal what my type actually is, according to a couple people who are pretty knowledgeable in the MBTI space and have a growing and budding YouTube channel that I'll also share in this video. So my name is Kevin, and if you guys are new to the channel, on this channel we talk about highly sensitive people, particularly highly sensitive men and masculinity. We talk about personality type, personality psychology like MBTI, and we mix in some mental health topics as well. So if you guys are new here, I want to welcome you to the channel, and if you like this kind of content, please consider hitting that subscribe button and clicking the bell beside it to stay notified of future videos. So yeah, let's get right into this. So just for some context, I was typed, so I got into MBTI and just personality psychology quite deeply in 2020, and I was typed as an ENFP via video interview in the summer of 2020 by a couple members of a typology Facebook group, and they're pretty immersed in the group. They seem quite knowledgeable. I don't necessarily know them very well, but we went through a full-scale process that's quite in-depth compared to getting typed via like a test online. Like I actually did a video interview with them. It was pretty in-depth. It was like a 20 to 30-minute video, and I was typed as an ENFP, and I remember being caught off guard because ENFP was not on my list of potential types that I could be. I was pretty surprised because I would always test as an INFJ, and beyond that, I'm pretty introverted, or at least my demeanor is pretty introverted, so I was surprised that I could be an extroverted type. So, you know, before I actually got typed by them, I was kind of down to considering between INFJ and INFP as kind of the two final types that I think I could seriously be. But after going through that assessment and kind of discussing with the people who had typed me, it became clear that I was an ENFP, but I was a shadow-focused ENFP. So if you're going according, or if you're familiar with John Beebe's 4 sides of the mind model, you have your main type as your ego, but you also have 3 other sides of your mind, one of which is the shadow that you access quite often. And the shadow of the ENFP is the INFJ, and it has the INFJ's functions. So I was dipping up and down, and the assessment did identify that I was actually using a lot of the INFJ's functions quite frequently, but my core ego type was ENFP. So essentially I went through that assessment, but a couple months after that, and a couple months after I had actually made some videos about being an ENFP and kind of trying to spread my knowledge about what I knew about being an ENFP, a viewer of mine commented, and she had thought that I had exhibited some INFJ-like traits. Namely, she thought I was in an NI-TI loop, particularly with the extent to which I was going to try and find certainty and verify my type. And she kind of, I think, felt that I was going through an internal process inside my mind where I was really trying to narrow down my type using NI and TI to kind of go through that internal thinking process to come to that conclusion. So her logic actually made a lot of sense to me, and I actually made a couple of videos, and I'll put them in the cards above, where I kind of broke down my use of, or I broke down a lot of the points she was making about my use of INFJ functions like NISE and FETI, and I kind of compared that to the ENFP's functions of FITE and NESI, and I kind of contrasted where I felt I was using the different cognitive axes, like NESI versus NISE, and kind of how that compared within myself. And that kind of helped me, I guess, process a little bit on my own, kind of where I was at with what cognition I was using. And from there, I still felt I wanted some extra certainties. I wanted to get a second opinion, because, you know, I do want to make a lot of videos on this channel kind of pertaining. I'm not really necessarily super into MBTI as a whole. Like, I wouldn't necessarily make videos talking about INTPs or ISTJs. Like, I don't have a huge interest in that. but I do like making videos related to my type and kind of people like me and kind of how I can use my own experiences to kind of help those people. So I wanted to be sure, or at least you can never be 100% sure, but I wanted to be maybe like 95% sure of what my type was, so I can be in a better position to help other people who are like me. So I had to get my type verified, and after watching Typecast Heroes, their videos for a while, and all the type of videos they make on the different functions and everything, they mentioned they offer a free type clarification service, and you know, I really trust it, or I trust them, because they're pretty reputable. The person who did type me, Jessie from Typecast Heroes, she supposedly typed people in the thousands. Like, she's typed a lot of people. Plus, she is an INFJ herself, and according to C.S. Joseph, and no, I don't, for those people who say I'm like glorifying C.S. Joseph, that's not true. He's only one voice in the MBTI space. But he says that Templar types, which includes INFJs, ENFJs, I believe ESTPs and ISTPs, I think. Don't quote me on that. But those 4 types, because they're Templar types, they're actually some of the best people at typing other people. Like, they're some of the best at typing other people accurately, and that's probably because of their high TI. So essentially, Jessie, who's one of those, typed me, and I do trust her her judgment. Of course, you know, only I can say for myself what my true type is, but I do trust her assessment. And so I went through the process with her. We did a few tests. We did like a video interview, and it was pretty in depth. And I'll reveal the type that I am, and it is in fact ENFP. So I am in fact an ENFP. She did verify that. And of course, like, it's hard for me to be 100% certain, and I'm someone who, you know, I'll brood over this all day long and just keep thinking and wondering. And because I think, you know, with ENFP, you know, well, first of all, NE as a dominant function, it's pretty abstract. It's kind of hard to find tangible examples of where I'm using NE. But it's a lot more subtle, and it goes all. Yes, your dominant function is something you use a lot behind the scenes, so it's not necessarily completely obvious all the time when you're using it. So I had made a video sometime after I had been typed as an ENFP the first time, and it was a video called ENFP versus INFJ. I'll also put that in the cards if you want to check it out. But I talked about how inaccurate online tests are, and how I kept being typed as an INFJ on these tests, like 16 personalities, and even these cognitive function tests were mistyping me. And a lot of the things I talked about in that video were kind of confirmed a bit by Jessie, and also my own conclusions based off being typed in ENFP as a second time. And something important to note, I think, it's not really, so the problem with 16 personalities and some of those tests is they're really assessing kind of your behaviors and kind of how your personality is actually manifesting in the world. And 16 personalities, for your information, by the way, is it's not a true MBTI test. It's essentially they're kind of mapping the Big Five test onto an MBTI test. So it's really testing Big Five, like openness, conscientiousness, neuroticism, all those 5 traits, and kind of trying to map it onto MBTI, which is not the most accurate thing ever. But that being said, you know, those type of behaviors, like, because I'm, let's say, very neurotic, or I'm very, well, I tend to be more conscientious. And, you know, that could lead someone to think, oh, definitely a J type, right? You can't be a P type and be conscientious. So things like that kind of, it's a bit too black and white, and doesn't really take into account the actual cognitive function uses of all the cognitive functions, and kind of the complexities that are involved there in terms of which functions are being used first and kind of in which order. So yeah, it's important to realize that MBTI, it's really about your cognitions and not your behaviors. So, you know, ENFPs, one thing we were discussing is ENFPs can come across quite introverted. And what Jessie had mentioned is that You know, the reason for that is kind of having that dominant intuitive perceiving function. And I mean, the truth is ENFPs are just typically not going to come across as extroverted as an SE Dom or a TE Dom or an FE Dom. Mainly because it's a perceiving function. SE is also a perceiving function, but it's more grounded. It's more there, like it's more in the present moment. It's ready to respond to external stimuli. Whereas a lot of that happens internally, and it's not something that's kind of projected out in an extroverted way in terms of your facial expressions and everything like that. So you know, like NE can seem similar in a lot of ways to NI. More so in the sense of how it kind of comes across from an external perspective. Like if you look at someone who's using NE and you look at someone who's using NI, the behavior may still present very introverted or kind of shy because a lot of that process is happening inside your brain. I mean, NE is external in that you're using external stimuli to kind of feed that pattern building inside your head, but it's really your brain that's coming up with those external connections. So I mean, my typology knowledge is still evolving, so I don't have all the answers. But that is my fair assumption, I think, based off the assessment and kind of what's been going on there. And yeah, as I mentioned, you know, I am a pretty conscientious person. I have a need to do things really well. That's something I typically associate with my highly sensitive person trait. As I'm an HSP, I'm quite conscientious. I have a need to do things really well. The thing is, though, those dichotomy tests that kind of say, oh, are you an N or an S? Are you a T or an F? Are you a P or a J? They would tend to take conscientiousness and map that onto J. I cannot be a P type if I'm conscientious. But the thing is, ENFPs can have strong TE. That was something we discussed after the assessment as well. You know, having a TE child that's fairly developed, you know, that can come through in your testing. And you know, that can definitely be a factor in, making you present as quite conscientious, because you have that kind of external thinking and need to do things well and effectively, and that can come across for sure. So an ENFP can still be conscientious. There may not be as many conscientious ENFPs as there are INFJs, but it can happen. And yeah, so I was obviously going through this analytical process trying to determine my type, right? But and what I was originally arguing with the person who had commented in my videos and said that I was an INFJ, I was telling them that, look, like I'm in an NET loop. Like I'm trying to, you know, collect as much information as I can from the external world about that could help me verify my type, and then I'm essentially, you know, going through a process of using that information to give me the answers of my type. And one example is getting typed via interview, which at least my assumptions are that could be the result of an NETE process where I'm relying on external information in order to type myself. I couldn't ultimately type myself because I have TI Trickster, or it's kind of in a it's in my shadow, and it's kind of my blind spot using TI. So it ultimately failed, right? Like I couldn't type myself on my own. I could have tried, but I ultimately turned that over and just relied on other people to give me those answers. So an NET loop could probably appear as analytical as an NITI loop, but the process is different. So that's all I kind of wanted to get out in this video. I have been clarified to be an ENFP. And let me know what your experience has been down below, what your type is, and kind of how you came to a conclusion about your type, and kind of, you know, what kind of patterns you see as that type. Like, are there any particular signs where you're like, yep, this is for sure something that I exhibit, and this means that I'm this type. So definitely share that down below. And of course, if you like this video, leave a like. And of course, subscribe and hit the bell if you want to see more videos like this one and stay up to date. Another thing is I did just start a new Facebook group for men, like a men's community, particularly for my highly sensitive male audience, but also for ENFP males, of course. So if you're a male watching this channel, definitely check that out. I'll leave a link in the description down below to that group. And of course, you know, I was typed by Typecast Heroes. They're a great channel in the MBTI space. They know their stuff, and I'll leave a link in the description to their channel down below as well. Amanda and Jesse make awesome videos on typology, and they're a great resource to learn from. So without further ado, guys, that's it for this video. And until next time, take care.